Think about it like this. Culture is just the shadow that our biology casts. Fighting over these biological gender issues as aspects of some larger culture war is ultimately like Peter Pan fighting his own shadow. You can't adequately address these things by simply shouting anti-egalitarian or patriarchy or misandry. Yes, the oaf husband, smart wife trope is prolific. This depiction of marriage dynamics in sitcoms is prolific for the very same reason that every married guy I know gives me this depressed half smile and says, "Happy wife, happy life," when telling me all the things he's not allowed to do. It's prolific for the same reason that mansplaining has been accepted into the Oxford English Dictionary. It's prolific for the same reason that we see so many "Where have all the good men gone" articles. It's prolific for the same reason that over 2/3 of all divorces are initiated by women, and one of the most common reasons cited is that they're just bored with their partner. It's prolific for the same reason that when women start earning the lion's share of the household income, or the husband becomes the stay-at-home parent, the divorce rate skyrockets. Regardless of their measurable contributions, if any, women are collectively perceived as being more socially valuable than men. This innate gender bias is simply reflected in our sitcoms. Yes, Glee and American Horror Story do paint a one-sided view of gender violence. They present this view for the exact same reason that primary aggressor laws like VAWA exist. They present this view for the same reason that White Ribbon and Take Back the Night campaigns exist. They present this view for the same reason that over 30% of American women live in constant fear of sexual assault. They present this view for the same reason that the 1 in 5 statistic won't go away despite the completely fraudulent research behind it. They present this view for the same reason that our former Governor General has recommended we create kangaroo courts to specially handle domestic violence accusations, and it appears that the government is going to go through with it. They present this view for the same reason that despite Title IX, American universities are implementing their own extrajudicial kangaroo courts. They present this view for the same reason that women get lighter sentences for the same crimes. They present this view for the same reason that some people are arguing women should not go to jail for their crimes, period, regardless of what they've actually done. Regardless of the facts, we perceive women as default victims and men as default perpetrators. This innate gender bias is simply reflected in our dramas. Yes, people have perceived the ubiquitous equal opportunity misanthropy of GTA as being one-sided sexist misogyny explicitly designed to degrade women. They perceive this for the same reason that the thoroughly debunked notions of the gender pay gap still persist. They perceive this for the same reason that most affirmative action programs are still aimed at women, even though they're now 65% of university admissions. They perceive this for the same reason that women can sue a workplace for discrimination, even though they are literally incapable of fulfilling the basic job requirements. They perceive this for the same reason that we still hear about institutional barriers to women in STEM, despite clear evidence of a 2-to-1 hiring bias in their favour. They perceive this for the same reason that the Bechdel test is gaining traction, even though it says nothing about whether a film or its female characters are actually good. They perceive this for the same reason that the EU wants to force 40% female quotas on company boards by 2020. They perceive this for the same reason that we constantly hear complaints about sexism, that women's sport doesn't receive the same attention and sponsorship as male sports, despite the fact that the top female soccer team in the world just lost 5-2 to a team of under 15 schoolboys. When women are treated equally, or more accurately held to the same equal standards and expectations as men, we see it as unequal and unfair. This gender bias is simply reflected in our perception of video games. Yes, Getting to the Greek and Big Stan make light of male rape in ways that would never, ever be acceptable if the genders were reversed. This double standard exists for the same reason that rape laws, despite claiming to be non-gender specific, are written to explicitly include penetration in the definition, therefore making it legally impossible for a woman to rape a man. This double standard exists for the same reason that rape shield laws exist, to subvert due process and ensure that the woman always has the final say on any contested matters of sexual misconduct. This double standard exists for the same reason that when a Russian man is held captive for days while he's tortured and raped by a woman, everyone jokes that he secretly must have enjoyed it. This double standard exists for the same reason that in Canada, a man cannot sue his ex for lying about taking the pill, but if a man pokes holes in a condom, it's rape due to the woman's lack of informed consent. This double standard exists for the same reason that in France, a man can literally be sued thousands of dollars in damages for not having enough sex with his wife. But you know, we have to put a stop to all of these evil, sexually entitled nice guys. This double standard exists for the same reason that it's become an almost weekly occurrence for us to hear a news story about some female paedophile who's gotten off with nothing more than a slap on the wrist. This double standard exists for the same reason that a male victim of statutory rape is actually ordered by the court to pay child support to his female paedophile rapist. This double standard exists for the same reason that Mattress Girl can be exposed for making the whole thing up and still get an award for bravery by the National Organization of Women. This double standard exists for exactly the same reason that the majority of rapes in the US are actually perpetrated against men in the prison system, but nothing is ever done. We see sexuality and reproduction as being exclusively owned by women, and ultimately you can't steal or take away from men what they never owned in the first place. This innate gender bias is simply reflected in our comedy movies. I want you to consider all of the things that we've just looked at, and now consider the famous words of feminist darling Chloe Annual.
Age. Before I say anything else, I have to thank you, Sabrina, for writing this. I think you've done a tremendous act of public service, and I'm genuinely very, very grateful.
Thank you.
It is hard to read an article like this and avoid the conclusion that we live in a culture that hates women, just hates us. It's hard to read an article like this and conclude that the men in this culture, boys and men in this culture, are raised to see women as not just less than them, but in some cases as less than human.
Notwithstanding the fact that the article she's thanking Sabrina Erdely for writing turned out to be such a fucking fraudulent piece of shit that Rolling Stone magazine ultimately had to retract it, and both the magazine and author are now in the process of being sued by just about everyone involved. What young Miss Annual has presented is still the socially sanctioned, mainstream status quo position, even when literally proven fraudulent. Just like Gamergate, the facts are completely irrelevant to the continuation of "to poor oppressed women's" narrative. It really doesn't matter that high-profile cases like Mattress Girl or Rolling Stone's A Rape on Campus article turn out to be complete and utter fabrications. And it doesn't matter that all of the media we've just looked at tells the complete opposite story about who society apparently just hates. The very fact that this mainstream narrative even exists in the first place, the very fact that it continues to persist in spite of all the clear evidence to the contrary, speaks to a much bigger problem surrounding human gender relations than some vague cultural bias in our media. Do I think feminism's assessment of society and their theories about a systemic, institutionalized patriarchy are inaccurate? Yes. Do I think, contrary to the mainstream narrative, that these media properties actually reflect a rather shit deal for men, socially speaking? Yes. But I don't think any of these media portrayals actually spread misandry. All they do is accurately reflect our innate, real-world attitudes about men and women. Attitudes that are firmly grounded within our sexually dimorphic reproductive biology. Biology that is ultimately well and truly outside the scope of any internet culture war to change.